Okay dudes, episode 3 and today we are doing double jump. So before we start, just to make double jump easier, I did one thing. And what I did was, instead of having one fall state, I created a second fall state. I called it ledge fall, and I kept our original fall state and called it jump fall. And I'll explain why a little bit later, but just so as you know, create a new state, call it ledge fall, and set it up exactly as before, and you'll be good to go from where I am. So there's a few ways we can handle the double jump. What we could allow is like 2 quick inputs, and then when we reach the apex of the first jump, we double jump based off that. That is a pretty decent method, but what I find it doesn't do is it doesn't give us freedom to jump when we're in the fall state. So instead what we're going to do is we are going to make a double jump state that doesn't come off this, but it's going to be based off these two. And it's going to allow us to double jump on whether we're falling, which is why we added this jump fall state, or whether we're in our normal jump state. So the first thing we're going to do to pull this off is I'm going to create a shortcut off jump. We're going to take everywhere we could possibly trigger a double jump from. And the first one is going to be jump, obviously. The second one is from our jump fall. There we go, super easy. So then what's going to happen next? We're going to be jumping and we're going to be falling, and then we're going to want to do our double jump. So let's just place that node in here for now, and we'll get our structure correct first. And then we're going to go back into our jump fall. And of course, once we go back in here, this will automatically handle this transition for us. So how are we going to do this? We're going to add an input, obviously. So we're going to use our jump button again. So in here, in this condition, we know what to do. We go for was input, and we go for input data, and we go for add input, and we go for new input condition. And our new input condition is our jump button. And again, moment pressed. Now we do not need any acceptable frames on this. But what we're also going to do is, because we have acceptable frames back here in our original jump, we're going to wait till these 7 acceptable frames have passed before we can trigger the double jump. And the only reason we're going to do that is we do not want like our jumps overlapping where we press the button once, and because of this 7 frames it triggers a couple of times, and sometimes things can get a little messy. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to, on this condition, we're going to go to other conditions, and we're going to add time elapsed, and we're going to say 0.1. So just even if the player is like beating the button like a lunatic, what will happen is now they won't be able to like trigger the double jump straight away. So we don't even need time elapsed when we're doing our jump fall. So I'm going to create again another new link, and I'm going to give it a condition of whilst input, my bad. And that input is going to be new input and our jump button. Again, moment pressed and 1 acceptable frame. Okay, so what do we want to happen when we reach the top of the jump? Well, we know what we want to happen. We want to go to copy that one above, paste this in here, because we know that this is our condition that checks based on we've reached the jump top. And then jump fall will work as normal. So this animation is set, this animation is set, this animation is set. We just need to choose an animation for this guy. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to choose ear spin. Now I made this animation. I've been through this before. I'm not making any more animations explaining how to do them. They're all in the first video. So check that out. Okay, so with our animation set in here, all we want to do is we want to go into our action and we want to say is jump. Basically, when we jump, perform a jump. And again, we will set gravity and stuff as and when we're done. So we should be able to double jump right now by pressing the button and then pressing the button again. So let's check if it works. So here I am chilling on our level. I press jump, that's fine. I press jump and I jump again and we go higher, which is perfect. Okay, so we can jump, double jump. Nice, okay. We do need to tweak the settings a little bit, but we'll get into that in a bit. But now we have a problem where I can jump and I can double jump and I can keep jumping infinitely and break the game. So the reason this is happening is because we're using fall, and of course from fall we can go back to double jump. So this is like an infinite loop that we can do right here. Double jump, let it reach the top, goes to fall, and when we're back in fall we can double jump again. So there's a simple way to get around this, and we're going to work on that, and we're going to start using switches. Okay, so what's a switch? Well, a switch is just a variable. It's a Boolean variable. It can be true or false or on or off. It's something that Gotcha Games used all throughout RPG Maker, and they use again in Pixel Game Maker and now Action Game Maker. But essentially it's just a true or false boolean, and instead of putting it as a variable, they give them their own section. So we're going to go and to our player object, and we're going to go and we're going to click on switch settings. And inside switch settings, you'll find a load of the default settings here, like is invincible, is freely movable, etc. What we're going to do is we're going to add a switch, and we're going to give that switch the name can double jump. You can use camel case, you can use whatever kind of case you want for this. And just for now, we're going to give it a default value of on. And we're going to click OK. Now we're going to make a second switch. And we're going to call this one has learned double jump. So this is one that we won't be worrying too much about today, but we're going to get the functionality in now to help us with later. And we're going to give this a default value of on. So we obviously want to put some checks inside our conditions here to move into double jump, if that's the case. So I'm just going to drag this out a bit. So what we're going to do, we're going to click on this check right here from our jump, and we're going to, instead of using an input condition, in our other conditions, where we have got time elapsed, we're going to add another one. And what we're going to say is switch or variable changed. And we're going to use the switch. And the switch target type is going to be myself. That means it's a self variable or a self switch. So as our object player is here, this switch settings is part of the player. So this is a self switch. And then we're going to find the target name, and it's going to be called has learned double jump. And as long as that is on, we can double jump. And we're going to put logical conditional with previous to and. So if this time has elapsed and this is true, we can double jump. And then we're going to add one more switch check. And this again is going to be switch or variable. We're going to go to switch. We're going to make the target type myself. You could also do the target type by saying set object and picking the actual player object, right? And you'd still come to the same result. But what we're going to do is we're always going to use self where possible. And we're just going to go in here. And this time we're going to use can double jump. And if that's on, then that's double jump. So now I want to copy both of these conditions and I want them in here. So I'm just going to go here to from our jump fall. I'm going to add the condition. I'm going to add the variable. Switch, fine. I'm going to say myself has learned double jump on. Yes, please. And then we are going to add a second one. Switch or variable change. Switch, myself can double jump on. Okay. So basically that means if both those switches are on, we can go into this. If they aren't on, then this trigger will not work no matter what we do. So the simple solution to prevent this loop is that when we go into this jump and we check this jump based on both these switches, when we're actually in the jump, all we do is we turn off can double jump. So in here, inside our double jump, again, underneath our other actions, I'm going to click this array. We're going to add an executable action. And we're going to go and we're going to look for switches. And you'll see switch and variable changed action. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here. We're going to pick object flag, which is fine. Then we're going to say from ourself, as we always do. And we're going to say can double jump turn to off, right? Boom. So what essentially that means now is this switch is off. So we jump and we press double jump and this is all true. And all of a sudden it's false. So when we go into this false state, if we press double jump again from here, this bottom check for can double jump, right? It's not going to ever come back true because it's always off. So what happens now if I test the game? So yet again, here we are in game. I can run, I can jump, and now we can no longer ever double jump again because we double jumped once and our variable is off. So the can double jump variable is off. We have to set it back on so we can double jump a second time after we touch the ground. We have to switch back on the ability to double jump, but we only want to do that when we hit the ground. So we can go and put it in our idle, but I don't like to put states and switches and stuff in our idle because it's kind of clunky because you'll end up with a lot of stuff going on here and this runs too often and you're kind of running code when you don't need to. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another action in here from when our jump fall touches ground. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this link. We're going to say jump fall goes to our new action, and our new action is going to be called land. Now you can make an animation for this. If you have an animation for this, you can use an animation for this. What's going to happen is going to happen when the player hits the ground. If you do create an animation, then you're going to set it in here. And what you're going to do is when you're coming out of this animation with this link, you're going to say when finished animation for your animation. But I don't have one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say keep previous animation. And then from this, I obviously can't use finished animation because it's a one frame eternally looping animation. It'll never finish. So I'm just going to pick change unconditionally. And in our land, that variable problem we had before, we're going to go into other actions. We're going to go to variables. We're going to object flag self. And we're going to say can double jump back on. So now what happens when we jump? So we jump and we're either falling or still jumping, and we press jump again and we go into double jump. That runs the check to see have we learned to double jump and can we double jump. And if both of those are true, it triggers the double jump. When we trigger the double jump, we turn off the ability to double jump by using can double jump variable. Then we reach our jump peak and we fall and we can't do anything about it. Once we hit the ground, and remember this check we had before, which was our tile contact, and we were checking if we were hit, the bottom of us was hitting a tile. If it was, now we're going to trigger the land action, or land state if you will, instead of the idle. And inside that land state, it's going to turn our variable back on, and then it's going to pass us unconditionally into idle. So now we should have a nice double jump loop. Okay, so because of a bug, I had to reset all of the links in my project. But now we're good. We double press and we double jump and we land and we switch back, and that's looking pretty good. So there is a little bit of a delay when we hit the thing, and that is because instead of unconditional here, when I was fixing this, I set this time elapsed to 0.1, but we can set that much lower, like 0.02. So that is pretty good, and it's exactly how we want it to be. So I don't know if I talked about this last time, but in our move and jump settings here, I made a couple of tweaks. So the speed is at 300, but you'll see here is I turned gravity to 1.4 and turned up the jump power. And what this allowed us to do is to get off the ground quicker and to come back down quicker. So the jump feels tighter. It doesn't feel as floaty, and it feels much tighter and much more solid. In our double jump, you will notice that there is an option in here in action settings called is not affected by gravity. So we're going to turn that on, but we don't want them 100% not affected by gravity. We want them like 20% not affected by gravity. And in my main jump, you'll see if I look at the action settings here, I made them 15% not affected by gravity. So that means that you just jump a little faster and you fall a little faster, and everything feels a little bit more impactful. Okay, so the last thing we can do with our jump is inside our move and jump settings in our player object. If you scroll down to the bottom, you will see here that there is jump input operation key index. And I've just set this to a jump button, and there is input effect duration. And I'm going to set this to like 0.2 of a second. So what this means is the longer I hold down the jump button, the higher I'll jump. So you get like a dynamic jump. And then in the jump that you want to have this, you have to click on the action and you'll have enable adjusted jump right here, and you turn this on. And so what you'll see now with my first jump, and if I hold the button, I jump much higher. Now the jump is way too high now, but that is the principle of how it works. And you can play with your settings if you want to use this type of a jump in your own game. I, however, do not. So I'm going to pop this off, and I'm going to go to our move and jump settings, and I'm going to unset this and make this empty. But it's just something to know if you want that kind of a dynamic jump where the link you press the button controls how much velocity is in the jump. So lastly, in our jump section, I made one last final tweak. There's in jump and in double jump. You'll see over here under left right move speed change, I changed this to 70. And that just means that it's not quite as floaty when you do a double jump and you're way up in the air. So in game it looks like this. Still got plenty of movement, but it's not quite super floaty. So that's what we want. I also slowed down the character speed in move and jump settings just for running and stuff like that, just to polish it up a bit. So that is today's episode, and that is the double jump, is everything about the double jump. I think we're in a good place with the game already. It feels really nice to me to play. We've got good movement, we've got a nice tight jump, we've got a nice powerful double jump on top of that, and we've got this nice fall state. So that's pretty cool. Next time I'm going to continue with the traversal skills. I'm going to get all like the basic, like standard Metroidvania traversal skills out of the way before we move towards like bigger skills and combat and stuff like that, because that takes a lot more setup. And with all the setup we've done in episode 1, I feel like we're best to capitalize on that with all our traversal skills now. So till next time, good luck, enjoy the tutorials, and good luck with the engine when it drops. A lot of this stuff does apply to Pixel Game Maker if you use that, so it can help there too. And yeah, take care.